Huddle with paperplusoffice.co.nz, your local office supplies specialist, now open for business.
Josie Pagani is with us. Hello, Josie.
Hi, Larry.
And Cam Slater with us, whaleoil.co.nz, editor of Truth. Hello, Cameron.
Hey, Larry.
All right, Josie.
Overachiever.
Josie, the Labor Party reshuffle, what do you see in this? David Shearer has brought back the old guard, promoted some new and dispatched with some other oldies, rejuvenated the party. Do you see anything that may change the political landscape for Labor?
Well, the thing I like about this is that everybody who's made it today has made it out of merit. You know, they're not a membership of one of the factions. No, it's true, Cam, because if you look at it, they're not a membership of the women's group or the union group or the gay group. They've made it on merit. See, I mean, you look at someone like David Clark. He's had some good wins on the board with Mondayisation of Waitangi Day and so on. He had there's a couple of private member bills pulled out. He's a good performer and he's a star in the making, I think. And then you've got people like Annette. Well, Tony Ryle has probably been doing family-friendly hours for the last 4 years. He's about to get the shock of his life, I reckon. She really is a pit bull with lipstick. He can get off the couch and start dealing with an attack from Annette, I think. So what I like about it, Larry, is that it looks like these are people who've proved themselves already. You know, they're not there by the patronage of anybody.
All right, and what do you see here, Cam? Mallard, Dalzell, Cunliffe getting dumped out of the top 20. Mr. Mallard wants the Speaker's role.
Oh, yeah. Look, last year Trevor was talking about being mid-career, and now he's talking about the speakership. Everyone knows the speakership's the last stop bus, and that's pretty much what his career has come down to, a desperate hope that Labor can win so he can be the Speaker. But in terms of the rejuvenation and refreshing, we've got the same tired old faces. I mean, we've got... last week Shearer was attacking the government over the Auditor General's report that criticises process. This week he's appointing Shane Jones to his front bench, and he's still waiting on an Auditor General's report that inevitably will criticise the process.
Well, that's interesting. The thing about Shane is interesting because Shane represents, in the Labor Party, he represents the pro-jobs, pro-development side of the Labor Party, doesn't he? I mean, he's gone to battle with the Greens on a few
I actually like Shane's politics personally, and I think that's really good.
But I think that's interesting. It's not, the Auditor General thing is aside, and I think that's actually going to be fine, and we won't even be talking about that this time next year. The thing about having Shane there shows that if he's serious, if the Labor Party's serious about putting jobs right up front and economic development right up there, then putting Shane there sends a big message right across the Labor Party that's where Shearer wants to go.
Look, I mean, look at again, last week, Shearer criticised Nick Smith's return to Cabinet, saying he was a retread, and now he's retreaded Annette King, who made her first showing as a fresh new face in 1987.
Well, no, come on, 9 out of the 20, of the top 20, that shadow cabinet, came in 2008 and 2011.
And 4 out of that 20 came through Helen Clark's office. It seems the way to get...
In the 80s, and one of them's Annette, and he needs her.
Okay, yeah, well, whether King is, over the hill, she's very formidable and she'll do a good job, I think.
She's not going to be the Mayor of Wellington.
No,
okay. What that tells us.
All right, well, what about, Cameron, to you, what about Mr. Cunliffe? What do you think?
Well, I think he'll just shuffle off and quietly retire, won't he? I don't think he's got any fight in him, and he's shown to be a bit of a coward when it comes to the blood and guts of politics, and you can't have cowards in politics.
You think he'll hang around, Josie?
I think he will. I think that there is a pathway for him. I think that's what Shearer was saying in his interview with you earlier, Larry, that he's been given shadow finance. He's got some meaty stuff. If he gets his teeth into that and can get some runs on the board, I think there's a way back for him.
We'll come back in a moment. Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. It's 14-6.
Larry Williams Drive with the business banking specialists at Westpac.
Back on the Huddle, Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. Josie, the criticism of the Constitutional Advisory Panel, undemocratic, biased, racist, focused mainly on embedding the treaty in a constitution. This comes from the independent panel. Do you see anything in this, conspiracy theories, or do they have a point?
I don't know what the crisis is here. When you look at who's on that panel, there are people like Deborah Coddington, who we all know is hardly a sort of lefty Māori radical, and then we've got the likes of John Luxton, who's a former National Minister, Bernice Manet, who was a netballer.
I mean,
this is ridiculous.
Constitutional reform, it's a joke.
But the point is, all they're doing is recommending. They're taking submissions. They're making some recommendations, and Parliament has the say. Now, I don't know why they didn't just. They've got a relevant point of view, which is that Parliament is sovereign, and they don't want Parliament's sovereignty to be undermined by Constitution. So why don't they just make that submission to the official board and the panel, and it'll get...
Well, Cameron, look, it was set up, it was a Maori Party coalition deal, wasn't it? So, of course, it was going to have a Maori focus with some of them, but I'm far from convinced much will come out of this. They're only recommendations. What do you see?
Well, I think that the whole process, the way it's been set up, was you're right, a sop to the Maori Party, but it's set up to actually fail. And it won't actually deliver the kind of constitutional reform that we desperately need here in New Zealand. And, for all the mocking that goes on in the media over Fiji, if you have a look at the way they've set about doing constitutional reform with the People's Charter, with submissions, creating actually some ownership of all of the population and what the constitutional should look like, that's kind of the framework that we should have been looking at, rather than this elitist group of people. I agree
with Cam that it needs to be something that's got ownership of all New Zealanders. That's right, and that's something that this review panel needs to take on board. And that's the problem with the treaty. At the moment, the treaty debate is that it's seen as something that belongs to Māori, not something that belongs to...
Well, the problem we've got in New Zealand is we've never really had a civil war, and constitutions, or great constitutions, derive out of often civil war. If we look at the constitution we inherited via legislation, really, from the UK, it came out of a civil war in the UK. The US constitution came out of a civil war. And the Declaration of Independence, and as well as the war against the British in terms of, locking in some of those constitutional things. Yeah, the Civil War came later, of course, but that bloodshed helps unify people in a common cause. And although the Confederacy split off for a short time, they then came back underneath the US Constitution. We have never had that in New Zealand, and so we've really just had an inherited constitution on the way through.
Thank you, Cameron. Cameron Slater, and thank you, Josie Pagani on the Huddle. It's now 8 to 6.